Okay, so the next rule you need to know is called product rule. Again, you need to recognize when you need to use product rule and how to do it. Okay, so let's talk about when to do it first. Now, you need to recognize that every time you see a product, what does product mean? Product means something times something. So you will see something on the left, you will see something on the right. So something with x on the left multiplied to something with x on the right. In fact, you look at all the examples later on, I highlighted in yellow the thing on the left and blue the thing on the right. Question 3, the thing on the left is x cubed, the thing on the right is square root x plus 1. Okay, question 4, the thing on the left and the thing on the right. Question 5. Okay, so it's quite easy to spot when you need to use product rule. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about how to differentiate using product rule. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the thing on the left, left lah. We're going to call the thing on the right, right, okay? So the way to differentiate using product rule. Okay, is left d right plus right d left. Okay, so what do I mean by left d right plus right d left? So you copy down the left. This is my left. And then when I say left d right, I actually mean left times differentiate my right. So that's what d right actually means. Differentiate my right side. So you look at your entire right side now. When you differentiate it, you are going to get -2. The 5 differentiate, you get 0. So I've just finished my left d right. Then plus right d left. So your right is 5 minus 2x. Your d left is 3. Okay, so this is my left d right plus right d left. That's how you differentiate. So I mentioned 2 things really. Recognize when you need to do it and how you need to do it. Okay, so now for this question over here, you continue by expanding. Okay, usually it's not so simple. So when I expand, the first one I get -6x plus 8. The second one I get 15 minus 6x. Just take note of the negative signs. And then you simplify, you get -12x plus 23. Okay, so that's for work example 1. Okay, but there are 2 very important things I need to talk about for product rule, which I will continue on. Okay, so for the second one, for example, let me just erase this. Okay, one of the important things you need to know about product rule is later on you need to realize something called factorization. Okay, so let me talk about work example 2. When you are asked to differentiate something like that, again, recognize that you need to use product rule. So I have something on the left with x, I have something on the right with x. Okay, and what happens here is you follow left d right. So left differentiate right. So take note, when you see differentiate right and this thing here, you need to recognize that you need to use chain rule because there's outside and inside. Okay, so power bring down, power -1, differentiate the outside first, inside no change, and then multiply by 1. So for me, even though we multiply by 1 doesn't change anything. For me, I will always encourage you all to write things like that because if you don't write, you'll forget to differentiate inside. Okay, one of the most common error that a lot of you will make is forgetting to multiply by differentiate inside. Okay, so everything here is left d right. Okay, then the next one is plus right d left. So this is my right, this is my d left. Okay, so this one over here, you cannot open or don't open up the power 7 and power 8. So I'm going to get 16x x minus 4 power 7 on the left, and now on the right is 2 bracket x minus 4 power 8. Okay, now usually leaving your answer like that is perfectly fine. But as you will see later on in differentiation, a lot of times you are trying to equate to 0 and you solve for y is x. Okay, and whenever you want to solve equation, one of the important skill you need to know is factorization. Okay, so let's talk about how to factorize this thing over here. Now, whenever you want to factorize, one of the key or the very first thing you'll learn about factorization is to take out a common factor. So you need to ask yourself, are there any common factors here? So for example, between 16x and 2, there is a common factor of 2. So you need to take out the 2. And then between x minus 4 power 7 and x minus 4 power 8, there is a common factor of x minus 4 power 7. Okay, so these are the common factors. And how do you factorize? Whenever you factorize, you take out the common factor and everything else you throw inside the bracket. Okay, so you look at this thing over here, 16x, you take out a 2 already, you are left with 8x. Okay, and then the x minus 4 power 7, you take out, so no more for the first one. So the first term only left with 8x. The second one, you take out the 2, so the 2 disappear already. Then you take out x minus 4 power 8. Sorry, you take out x minus 4 power 7 from x minus 4 power 8. So you are going to be left with x minus 4 power 1. Okay, so that's how you factorize by taking out a common factor and you simplify. Okay, now this form here is extremely useful because later on when you equate to 0, very quickly you can tell me that x is equals to 4, x is equals to 4 over 9, because that's what you do for factorization and solve equation, right? You see two things with bracket multiplied to each other equals to 0, one of it must be 0. So you can see x is equals to 4 and x equals to 4 over 9 very quickly after you factorize. So one of the important skills you need to know is how to factorize after you differentiate. Okay, the next example I want to go through is going to be example 4. Okay, example 4 is actually very long and is something that a lot of people always struggle with. So I would like you all to listen. Okay, so example 4 over here, let's talk about differentiation first. So what happens here is, number one, you need to recognize that this square root is power half. Okay, so I'm just going to write it as power half immediately. And then I see two things over here with x multiplied to each other. So I differentiate using product rule. So when you use product rule, left, the right, power bring down, power minus 1 inside no change, times differentiate inside. So this one here, please remember, 2 times 4. So everything here so far is left, the right. Then I plus right, the left. The left is just 5. Okay, so this one is not an issue now because you all kind of got used to it. So left, the right plus right, the left. Now, simplify. So what I'm going to do is, don't go and expand the bracket. I say many times, when I say simplify, you just take your half times the 4, which is 2, write it side by side here. Okay, this 5 also don't go and multiply inside. Now, so one very important thing here is you need to know how to simplify this thing over here. Okay, there are generally 2 ways to simplify this. The first way is factorization. The second way is combining fractions. I will show both ways and explain both ways. Okay, but let's talk about factorization first. Now, factorization in my previous example, notice that when I have power 7 and power 8, I factorize out power 7. What happens is that you always factorize the power that is the smaller one. So you take out power 7, the first one don't have already, the second one you still got a power 1 over there. So key thing to understand is whenever you factorize, you always take out the smaller power. Okay, so when you look at this example over here, I can take out common factor between this and this by factorizing out the smaller power. The smaller power is negative half. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to factorize out 4x minus 9 power negative half. Okay, when you factorize this, everything else throw inside a bracket. Okay, so let's talk about what's left. The very first one, after you take out 4x minus 9 power negative half, you will only be left with 5 bracket 5x plus 7. Okay, the whole power negative half disappear already. But the second one, there is still a 5 there, but this one over here, after you take out 4x minus 9 to the power of negative half, what is left? Okay, so what you have left is actually 4x minus 9 power 1. Okay, now how do I know it's power 1? Two ways you can try to imagine or visualize. Can you imagine if I expand back this multiply to this, the powers negative half and 1 is going to add up to half? Okay, so when you expand back, you must get back the half. Negative half plus 1 gives you the half. Okay, that's the easiest way to visualize that it's supposed to be 1. Okay, another way to visualize is if you go back to the previous example here, how did I get this 1 over here? I took 8 minus 7, right? This 1 over here, I took 8 minus 7. I took this one, the original power, minus what I took out. So, this one over here, this 1 over here, the original power is half, minus you took out negative half. So you get 1. So that's another way to visualize lah. But the important thing is you need to do this factorization because, as you will see later on, first and foremost, everything inside you can expand and simplify. Okay, so you'll get 10x plus 20x, and then 14 minus 45. That will give you minus 31. Okay, so you will get something like this after you simplify what's in the bracket. And this form is very important because, number one, you can write it as a fraction because you can bring down the power half to the denominator, negative half to the denominator. And the second reason is later when you equate to 0, very simply, you know that x is 31 over 30. The numerator is equal to 0, so x is 31 over 30. So you need to know how to manage this factorization. Okay, so this is whatever I went through is the first way of simplifying, otherwise known as factorization. Okay, I'm going to talk about another way to simplify. Let me rearrange and organize this first. Okay, so another way to simplify, the steps are almost exactly the same. Okay, the steps are exactly the same at the start. Okay, the only difference is from this step onwards. Now, so the other way of doing right is to write it as a fraction first, right from the very start. So this one will be 2 bracket 5x plus 7 over 4x minus 9 power half plus 5 bracket 4x minus 9 power half. So I write it as one fraction. The one on the left can write it as a fraction. The one on the right, you can also write it as a fraction. But what happens here is you want to combine the two fractions together into one. So how do I combine two fractions together into one? You actually make them the same denominator. So both the denominator, you make it 4x minus 9 power half. The very first fraction over here, nothing changes because the denominator is already 4x minus 9 power half. Okay, but the second one over here, you need to see that I need to multiply 4x minus 9 power half to the denominator and multiply 4x minus half to the numerator as well. So what you end up with is the denominator is that, but your numerator, you'll see that you get 5 bracket 4x minus 9 power 1. Where did the 1 come from? Half plus half, because it's the same thing. Same base, you can add the powers together. And you will see that when you take the fraction, the numerator, and simplify, you will end up with 30x minus 31 also. When you expand and simplify. Okay, so you realize that the steps are actually almost very similar, except that generally there are two ways. One is to factorize. So this one here is factorize. This one here is combine fractions. Okay, now generally speaking, this is the hardest product rule can go. Okay, and usually we would want you to get this form, especially O-level questions. Okay, so whichever method you prefer, just stick to one and make sure every time this type of question come out, you follow. Just know how to do it. Okay, highly likely will come out for your exams one. This is the hardest if you go for product rule. For algebra, I haven't talked about trigo and exponential and log functions yet.